Welcome to a bonus episode of Garage Time. This week I have a little extra time in the shop, so I thought I would do something about the lighting in the garage.
Garage Time.
It's pretty dark in here. I do have some natural light during the day through the door. I'll show you in a second. But I purchased some of these really cheap LED strip lights. These are from eBay. So the goal is to improve the lights by adding these into the ceiling rafters. So I've looked at some other ideas for garage LED lighting, and for me this is attractive because it's cheap, and two, it's pretty compact. So I'll explain in a minute how I use my garage attic for storage, but I thought this would be a good use of LED light strips. So let's show you around. Here's a close-up of the actual LED strips that I got. And these are supposedly the super bright one. They are 12 volts, and there's just an individual band of LEDs. So it has an adhesive back, which I've read isn't that great, but I have a plan on attaching these to some aluminum channel. So this is the LED strip. It looks quite long. I haven't measured it yet. I think they're less than about $5. Here's a quick tour of my kind of workspace. This is my Project 911 Porsche I've been working on. Just going around. This is a just standard 2-car garage. Not always that clean. That's some natural light. So when that door is open, I always get pretty good natural light coming in. And then over here is just kind of a junk pile of storage. So what I intend to do is use the light strips on these rafters. You see that rafter right there. I'd like to try to keep them on there as much as possible so that I can access things above. Occasionally I store stuff up there. Here's a better view with the light behind me. So these beams would be the best place to use the light strips. Also maybe up against here against the wall, and potentially I could put, you know, strips going this way. But if I do that, then it really prevents me from getting my go-kart down, which I've had since I was a kid. Currently, I'm only using these 2 fluorescent lights, one above each kind of car location, and they're just not that great, not that strong for areas where I'm working here, like on this bench. Especially at night, it's just not enough light. I hope the video quality will improve. You know, time will tell. All right, I got these channels from the metal supply store. So this is a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch aluminum channel. So the profile from the end is like this. It's probably 1/16 inch thick, and it's pretty lightweight. So rather than trying to attach these adhesive back strips right to the wood, which I don't think it'll attach, I'm going to attach it here to this. That allows me to move them around and position them as I need to. This channel here will support its own weight, plus the weight of the LEDs. I'm going to start by wiping these aluminum channels down with some acetone to remove any grease or oils that are on the channel, in hopes to get those LED light strips to attach a little bit better. All right, that's enough cleaning. Okay, each of these channels is, I think, 8 feet. And that's how I bought them. The LED strips are much longer than that. So I'm going to start attaching it on one end, and then there are marks on the strips where you can cut them. So I'm just going to cut it to the length of the channel and then see how much leftover I have. One of the hardest parts of this project is actually getting the backing off without taking the adhesive strip with it. So you have to separate it carefully. If you just rip this off really quick, you'll take the adhesive off with it, and then you're left with a LED light strip that can't be glued down. I'm not sure how strong this adhesive is going to be in the long term. It might be, there we go. It might be useful to have sprayed down some spray adhesive on the aluminum before I started this. But yeah, time will tell. Okay, right here on the end, there are some marks on the LED strip where you can cut. So I just lift up, cut right through. Okay, so it worked out pretty well. This is the only piece I have left over from one roll. So one roll, the aluminum strip, so that's 16 feet. This is just a tad over 16 feet. I think you can solder these together, but it's so small, I don't even think we need to worry about it. There was no instructions with these. I assume it's okay to attach it to a metal substrate, but I'm going to check to make sure these aren't just shorted out on the backside with a voltmeter. Measure the resistance. I think it's fine, but before I connect it to my power supply, I don't want to break it. Yep, it's mostly open, so I am going to just plug it in and see what happens. Black to black and red to red. Oh wow, it's actually pretty impressive. Yeah, I like it. That's cool. One thing I might try is to measure how much current this takes. I know this is a 12 volt power supply. It's also 12 amps. This is left over from my RC car days, which I still play with them. But I'm not going to probably use this long term. I have another idea, but for testing, this is perfect. But maybe it's a good idea to measure the voltage and current characteristics, because once again, it didn't come with anything. Okay, I just set up a current meter, so the power goes through the meter and into the LED strip, so maybe we can get an idea how much power it draws. It looks like 2.97 amps, so 3 amps, and this strip was cut in half. So that's a good number, 3 amps for an 8-foot strip, which is pretty significant. That's 36 watts. It's 12 volts, 36 watts. And I can check the voltage too with this guy, even though I know it's a 12 volt supply. Actually, it's 14.1 volts. When we put these up on the ceiling, I think it's important not to run these in daisy chain. That just means that more current has to go through each strip to get to the next one. So I'm going to wire these together with dedicated lines right to the power supply or to a battery. And that makes sure that they're wired in parallel and they each get the same voltage without having to run current through one strip to get to the next. That's probably confusing. I'm going to do my best to show you the installation of these strips onto the beams. So you can see the wires there are soldered in place. I decided to put 3 side by side only because I had a limited number of beams and I wanted to really make sure it was bright enough. So there's 3 side by side going all the way down. Those are wired in parallel and 8 feet long. So on this beam over here is, I only had 5 channels. So there's 2 strips here. And this time I offset them just a little bit because I had a little more length to use. So I added you know, little offset there, so it's probably additional 2 feet. So this spans probably 12 feet versus this one behind me only spans about 8 feet. But this is mostly the area that I work in. If this goes well, I'd like to add more, maybe towards the back side of the garage. That's landscape wire, so low voltage wire for outside lighting. It's pretty heavy duty. I think it's 16 gauge. And so there's two sets of wires that come down, head over the top of the roof there, and then come down to where my switches are, kind of a rat's nest there, and then hooked into my power supply. I did decide to go with an inline fuse. This is just an automotive fuse. There's a 15 amp fuse there, just for a little extra safety. And this is that power supply. Like I said, this is a 12 amp power supply, and I have 5 strips. So that's 15 amps needed to run these lights. So this isn't going to cut it in the long term, but it should work just for a couple minutes. So I set the camera up on the stand. So I'm about to turn everything on. Right now you're seeing the lights as it was before, kind of my dark dungeon, just the fluorescent tubes. I'm going to switch it on. Bam. So I'll do that again with the camera in a different setting. Right now the camera is in exposure lock, so the camera is not adjusting for the extra light, which there's a lot more of. So let me try that again with the camera in its automatic setting. Okay, this time the camera is going to automatically adjust to the additional light, which our eyes do the same thing, so I guess it's a fair test either way, but I gotta tell you, there is a lot more light. So here we go. So yeah, you can tell that it changed. You might notice the color of the lights. So these lights are what they call the soft white, maybe, or it's almost like a yellow color to it. So this is my workshop light. It is also LED. These are the bright lights that give kind of a blue or purple tint. So if I turn this on, you kind of can see the difference between the light colors. So this is a very bluish light. These lights, I can point up to those in a minute. These lights are pretty soft, and that's what I ordered. I wanted the softer lights. Here's a view. I don't know how well this is going to turn out, but this is on my left. The work light is the bright bluish LEDs, and then this strip of lights is more yellow, and you know, it's a little bit more natural. You can see the fluorescent lights are somewhere in between. So it's definitely kind of a different color, and the camera is adjusting for the brightness here the best it can do. But I'm pretty happy with it. It definitely gives more light. It's easier to see. Doesn't really make me look too purple. I think it's working out pretty well. I'm going to do one more comparison with. Right now I have both the fluorescent lights on, the original fluorescent lights, and the new LED lights. They're both on at the same time, which is probably what I'm going to do. But I'm going to turn them off and then use LED only and then fluorescent only, so you can kind of get the idea what the differences are. So this is LED only. Still pretty bright. I think there was a slight difference. Maybe the color changed a little bit when the fluorescents went off. And now I'm going to flip it the other way. So I'm going to keep the fluorescents on, LEDs off. Okay, that's fluorescent only, and you can really see a difference in the color. The camera is adjusting. It doesn't have this near the same brightness. If you look up here against the wall, it's not anywhere close to what it is when these are on. So the camera plays a little tricks on this, but I really think it's a success. So these garage LED strip lights are hopefully the way to go for me. I don't know how long they're going to last. They do get pretty warm, so I can touch the strips. Remember, they're on aluminum channels. The aluminum is taking a lot of the heat, which is probably a good thing. Maybe they'll last a little longer. I can hold on to the aluminum as long as I want. It's not going to burn me. I don't think it's a fire hazard, but it is a lot of energy. I mean, there's 9 amps going in each of these strips. There's 3. So I hope that the adhesive hangs on. I hope they don't get overly hot, and hopefully they last a long time. If you have experience with these LED strips, let me know. I've heard that sometimes the electronics burn out and the LEDs just don't last for about more than a year. But the cost of the LEDs is really no more than a light bulb. So the way that these are mounted, it would be a pretty simple exercise just to pull the whole strip down and slap a new one on. I do think it's important to have a pretty large power supply. So this one isn't going to be large enough, and it might actually get brighter if I do pick a bigger power supply. Each strip is, and my strips are, they're cut in half. Each strip is 3 amps. So you need something at least 15 amps, probably with a little bit of margin, like a 20 amp power supply. That's a pretty big power supply. You might be able to get by with a landscape power supply, just like I used landscape wiring. That might work well. That's like a transformer type power supply. I don't know how the LEDs do with the transformers, but I think they make LED ones. So I'll try to put a link in the description below for a possibly recommended power supply. I'll also link in the description below each of the parts that I used in this project. The LED strips, the wiring, the channel if it's available like on Amazon or maybe eBay. The other thing I was going to talk about is potential power supplies. So a power supply can get a little pricey, and you know, maybe 30, 40, 50 bucks, I'm not sure. I'll look for one and post it in the description. But the other thought I had was maybe I can just use a 12-volt battery. I have a battery here that I'm going to try. This one is charging at the moment. This is a small battery. It came out of my kid's scooter, so we had to replace the battery in the scooter. This one's a little bit old, but it might be good enough to run the lights. Now, this is a 10 amp hour battery, which means it's going to go down in about an hour. However, if I hook up my battery tender to it, it'll replenish some of that power as it's being consumed, and then overnight it'll keep it charged. So this battery may not be big enough, but I could certainly get an automotive battery or a deep cycle battery that would allow it to deplete somewhat during the day and then recharge overnight. So it's a constant buffer. So that might be the most economical way to go. Plus, sometimes it's handy to have an extra battery. So thanks for watching this short video on my garage lighting project. It's nice to take a little bit of a break from the Porsche, and if this is your first time to the channel and you're interested in my project Porsche, I'll leave a link at the very end of this video. Thanks for watching. I'll post another video, hopefully on Saturday, with more progress on the Porsche.